What is the most effed up thing that happened in this site? Story 1. One that sticks with me was a woman who got violently abused and posted a photo of her beat-up face for support. People dug through her post history and found that she'd at one point posted a pic of her at Halloween with her face in makeup that included makeup bruising. The crowd then decided that she was faking the whole thing for attention and started to harass her non-stop until she posted again with a video of her crying and trying to scrub the real wounds off her face. Story 2. There was an incident in which the mother-in-law fed her granddaughter a cookie made with ingredients she was allergic to. I think one ingredient was bananas. So grandma made this giant batch of cookies, and every time she would go visit her granddaughter, she would take some cookies in hopes of giving her granddaughter one. You may wonder, why the heck would she do that? Apparently, some people refuse to believe in their relatives' allergies and will feed them their allergens just to prove a point. So mom left the room, grandma pulled out a bag of cookies, toddler granddaughter ate one, and, surprise, suffered a severe anaphylactic reaction. Fortunately, mom was home and had an EpiPen to save the poor girl's life until she could be taken to the hospital. Story 3. I believe it was a combined effort between 4chan and Reddit, but both communities en masse voted for the Taylor Swift Sing at Your School contest and in overwhelming fashion made the #1 voted school a school for the deaf. Story 4. I remember a really eerie one where someone on this sub asked about information from people who accidentally killed someone, and this user went on about how he and a group of kids witnessed the death, possibly accidental, possibly not, of a disabled kid, and they all just left him there and never told anyone about it, and the kid was never found. Someone asked based on the details if the story was about Scott Clayshalt, and the user almost immediately deleted his entire account. I don't believe a whole lot of stories in this site, but wow. Hard to say it doesn't leave you thinking. Kind of angers me how people are inclined towards self-preservation at all costs. Story 5. I remember reading a story of a woman who was being stalked by a man, can't remember if it was a former partner or stranger, to the point where he was making death threats towards her. If I recall correctly, one night he ended up breaking into her house, but she managed to stop him by shooting him with a gun that she bought in anticipation that he was going to escalate into more violent tactics. He survived and ended up getting sentenced to 5 years or so in prison. 5 years later, she came back and posted on this site asking for legal advice because the guy was finally out and was, once again, making death threats towards her. She eventually deleted her post for some reason. Who knows what happened, but I hope she's okay. Story 6. Around the time of Cumbox, maybe even in the same or similar thread, there was a woman who told us all how she didn't change her underwear for weeks or months at a time. She'd shower and put the old crusties right back on, over and over. Women have discharge. When I say old crusties, I am not exaggerating. She said how when the build-up got too much, she would scrape it off with her fingernails and put them right back on. She posted a picture or two and it was the equivalent of the Cumbox in a pair of briefs, absolutely horrifying. I do not have a link because I refuse to see that image again, once was enough, apologies. Story 7. This was maybe 4 to 5 years ago. This gal was posting almost daily on the WTF sub showing her stomach. She was very athletic but her stomach was bulging because she had been constipated for well over a month and had not had one bowel movement during that time. If I recall correctly, it ended up going to 3 months and then the post stopped and the account disappeared. No follow-up on what happened. I like to think it finally went away and she had a nice 3-hour poop. Story 8. I read one on Best of Redditor updates where a 16-year-old boy and his siblings got kicked out of his stepfather's house after his biological mom had an affair. The boy was really mad at his mother because it had essentially ruined the family's lives, and in the update the boy reveals that his mother committed suicide and he and his siblings are now living with their biological grandparents or something. The story was absolutely heartbreaking to read, and I really hope it's just a work of fiction because I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Story 9. I'm trying to find it but can't. It was a guy who kept posting the same thing, a few specific words, over and over. He then started responding to himself with other accounts. Most of what he was saying was gibberish, and it just got really weird. People said it seemed like this guy was just slowly going mad and we were basically watching it happen through the site. There was a whole YouTube video on it. Story 10. Here are mine, which are probably tame in comparison to a lot of contributions here, but anyway. First, the guy who did a paternity test on his kids who were spread across different ages and found out he wasn't the biological father to any of them. His wife wouldn't admit to cheating throughout their marriage, and then after a few updates she committed suicide. Second, the boy who accidentally paralyzed his school bully by shoving him away in defense and causing him to accidentally puncture his spinal cord on a sprinkler head. Third, the Examine Death subreddit. And lastly, the guy who admitted to accidentally fapping to naked dead bodies of Holocaust victims when he was younger. Story 11. There was a guy in Argentina that came asking for help because his mother had disappeared. The post was sticked and the mods were trying to help the case go to the media and the authorities. It was there for a while. Turned out, his brother had killed her and buried her in their house garden. Story 12. The dude whose son sodomized the dog and wrecked his marriage. The dog had a huge change of behavior and the husband took it to the vet who said it was sodomized. He freaked out and asked his son, who admitted he didn't tell his wife as it was a father-son stuff. Then he caught the kid in the act of doing stuff with the dog. He decided to tell the wife then, and she did not believe the husband at all, and the son said the dad was actually doing it to the dog. She took the son's side. Story 13. There is this mother and grandmother who caught their very young daughter sneaking a sip of alcohol. So what do? They forced the child to drink the entire bottle on her knees. Child died of alcohol poisoning. Story 14. Not the most effed up, and the authenticity was questioned, but that couple who had a horrible son that finally drove the mother to beat him near death and abandon him. The last straw that caused her to flip out was they caught him cutting their baby daughter's face. What I really remember is how calmly the husband asked the wife, as he was holding their baby daughter, "Is he dead?" I effing hope so. Story 15. There was an Ask thread looking to hear from people that had legally killed someone. A guy posted saying that he was gaming with his noise-cancelling headphones and an intruder had entered his home and was violating his wife. He didn't hear anything until he removed his headphones, walked into the bedroom, and killed the guy. Every time I put on gaming headphones I think about that couple and wonder how they are doing. Story 16. The one that still gets me is the video of the woman whose legs were basically hamburger after she was hit by a car, and she's in complete shock sitting up and laughing with the other people around her, and no one is doing anything about her legs. Story 17. The woman who walked in her house in the middle of the day, only to hear moaning. When she walked to see what was going on, she found her daughter and husband going at it. The worst part was the daughter was begging her not to do anything because she loved her dad. Her dad had groomed her from a young age, so she had no clue how wrong it all was. Story 18. There was one on relationship advice where a guy was asking how to deal with his paranoid wife after she made friends with a fellow mum who suggested his working long hours was him cheating. He wrote a few posts where he detailed this friend being an issue, then how to deal with his wife when she got physically abusive. Eventually he took the kids, put her in some sort of psychiatric facility, and she got out and killed herself. Final post was him saying how the friend that kicked it all off wanted to say words at her funeral and he didn't want her there at all. Story 19. Not sure if it's the same, but the fact that a woman was posting often about her large family and then her account went quiet, and it turned out that her 2 sons had killed the family and planned to then go on and kill a bunch of others. The baby sister was spared and another sister played dead so she could wait it out and survived. Really messed up story. If you've gotten this far and enjoying the content, please leave a comment of your own story. We'd love to make a video of them in the future. Story 20. Guy and his friend work over the summer, clearing trees with professional arborists. Friend cuts himself open with his chainsaw, blood everywhere. They throw him in a car and try to rush him to the hospital. More blood everywhere. They hit traffic on the freeway so they use the shoulder. A couple of self-appointed highway vigilantes see them coming and block the shoulder. They scream and yell at them to move. They don't move. They scream and yell some more. They don't move. Friend's pulse is fading fast. This goes on for 10 minutes. Until they finally get around them at an exit ramp. A cop shows up and escorts them to a waiting ambulance a couple of miles down the highway. The EMTs load friend in and take off, but it's too late, he dies less than a mile from the hospital. One of the vigilante shoulder blockers shows up a few minutes later and stops to complain at the cop about the shitty drivers, then notices the thoroughly blood-soaked men at the side of the road. Cop shows her the car that looks worse than when Marvin got shot in the face in Pulp Fiction, then cites her for a bunch of stuff. The second vigilante gets stopped and ticketed by another cop. People, don't block the shoulder. You don't know why someone is driving on it illegally. They may be assholes, sure. They probably are assholes. But it's possible that they have a really good reason for doing that. Story 21. The kid who killed himself as a teenager after being tormented at school for smelling like feces all the time. His dad had been pimping him out since he was 4, so he was completely tore up. It is literally the saddest, most disgusting thing I have ever seen on this site, and can't even bring myself to talk about it, even with close friends. Nobody should have to know that sort of evil exists, and only reason I'm sharing it here is to answer the question. Story 22. A couple years back there was a thread asking about people who accidentally killed someone. Someone posted on it stating that as children, they used to play at this place in the outskirts of town with a huge river and cliffs. There was this special needs kid that him and a group of other kids pushed off a tall hill on a super rainy day. They freaked out, ditched him and went home, swearing to keep the whole thing a secret from their parents. Apparently the kid went missing, probably died where he fell and his body was scavenged by animals, or he fell into the river while injured because he noticed that the kid was missing and it was on the news. Someone replied to the post and posted an unresolved missing child case from decades ago, and it matched the story. He even looked into the poster's Reddit history and noticed that he mentioned moving back to his childhood town, which was the town the missing kid was from. He also posted geographical data of where a river and cliffs would be located within walking distance of a school. Story 23. There was a post about a woman who wanted to know how to protect herself in the event she were violated and taken into the woods, or something like that. She wanted to know what evidence could be left behind, or something along those lines. Turned out when people reviewed the OP history, it was a man, and very clearly it was someone trying to plan a crime. I'm not sure if I'm remembering it correctly, but it was super effed up. I hope that person hasn't harmed anyone since the years have passed. Story 24. Relationship advice post by a husband who started by saying that his wife isn't the smartest cookie in the jar. The couple was struggling financially, living month to month, but they get by. Had kids too. Wife suddenly gets the genius idea that they could make a bunch of cash if their car crashed and got written off. Happened to one of her friends who won an insurance claim after driving into a ditch and was encouraging others to do so. Husband says no every time wife talks about it, explains reasons why, and finally makes her promise not to talk about it at all. Next week, the guy gets a call from the police saying the wife had run into an accident and is in police custody. Turns out the wife had been waiting at a traffic stop, then suddenly accelerated forward during a red light and drove headfirst into a vehicle coming from the other side at top speed. She wasn't injured, but the other vehicle had a mother and a kid who instantly died and another teenage kid in critical condition. Guy visits wife in custody and she acts all proud with no remorse, as if she did something great for her family. Dude made the post asking whether he should come clean about her talking to him earlier about the accident and insurance fraud, which will likely change her manslaughter charge to murder and add decades to her sentence. The post stayed up for less than an hour. Story 25. So a few years ago I was waiting for my bus. Was on the way to a party and already was dressed up and everything. I was bored and went through Ask Me Anything sub and saw a post that said something like, "I am committing suicide AMA." From the comments, I understood that the person was trying to OD and already took pills. Every comment underneath were all saying what a horrible thing that is and that they should think about their family and everything. I felt sorry and wrote some nice words and offered to accompany them for a bit. It just didn't feel okay to have the last interaction of a human to have strangers insulting them for taking their own life. I didn't expected him to actually write me, but a moment later I had a chat request. He wrote me because I was the only one who replied with some nice words. I started to ask about his situation and tried to talk about nice things to give him good thoughts. We laughed together and had a nice convo. I always asked in between if there is something he needed or if I should contact someone or send an ambulance to his place. Once he didn't reply for a certain amount of time. This was so surreal. He explained that he already planned everything through. Well, after some time he realized that he probably didn't take enough since he should already be dead by that time. I asked if he was gonna do it again and he said no, and that he already felt more optimistic about his life. I did a few checkups afterwards. His life turned to better and he found a job and didn't feel suicidal anymore. We don't have contact anymore, but I am glad that I was the friend he needed in that moment, but I would lie if I wouldn't say that effed me up for a while. Maybe that isn't as effed up as some other stories, but it felt like it since it actually affected my life. That effed me up more than some other Reddit horror stories. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Thread Talk for more content like this. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out. Have a dope day and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers!